Hello, this is Father Michael Nasser coming to you from St. Nicholas Orthodox Church here in Grand Rapids, Michigan for this week's Midweek Reflection. And this week I am reflecting on faith. I think a lot of us think that living out our faith, acting out our faith, is anything having to do with God or religion. And that's certainly the context. If we're operating out of faith, it's certainly having to do with God, following God, our obedience to God. It's definitely a part of it. But here's a missing piece I think a lot of us have not really recognized when it comes to what faith really is. If I do something out of my belief in God or my religious beliefs, that's not necessarily faith. It may be religious, it may be spiritual, it may be somewhere part of that context, but what's faith? The Greek word for faith in the Bible really, honestly, should almost always be translated not as faith into English, but as trust. In other words, when we act in faith, we're acting in trust. And if we don't need trust, even if it's a religious type of question or activity or choice, if it doesn't require trust, is it really an act of faith? And I'm going to say generally no. And I'm really concerned with the no part. I'm concerned with getting us to what does it mean to act in faith? In other words, if I'm going to do something and there's no cost to me, there's no difficulty for me to overcome, it's just in the realm of my religious life. Am I acting in faith? Not if I don't need trust. Why? Because faith is trust. So when, in my view, does faith come into play? When you do need trust. In other words, you get to a moment where because of your religious beliefs and your spiritual environment, your choices, all of that, there's going to be a cost. There's going to be sometimes even a loss or a risk taken when you step out in faith or when you follow your religious beliefs. That is faith. In other words, you have to have both the religious belief and the spiritual environment, all of that. You also need to have risk, because without risk, there's no need for trust. An example I like to use once in a while is, you're out hiking in the woods and you get to this big canyon, but to cross the canyon, you've got this rickety old bridge and the rope is really ratted and the boards are broken. And then you got this really brand new, nice concrete, steel-girded suspension bridge, solid. To walk across that bridge doesn't take much faith. Maybe if you're afraid of heights, I guess it could take a little bit, but generally speaking, it looks secure, it is secure. It doesn't take much trust to cross the bridge. But to cross the rickety-looking thing that looks like it could break at any moment, that takes a lot of trust. You have to place your trust in something that you're not guaranteed will be a good receiver of your trust. In other words, it takes a lot of trust to do that, meaning it takes a lot of faith. And I think we get to a moment in our lives where things are harder to trust. It takes more commitment, more faith, risking more loss to keep going. That, I think, is the point of faith. Why am I thinking about this today? It's the fifth Wednesday of Great Lent in the Orthodox Church, which means tonight is one of the longest services of the year and one of the most challenging services of the year. Challenging on two different dimensions. It's challenging spiritually because we're going to go through the entire canon of St. Andrew of Crete, where he goes through dozens of personalities from the Bible, and we see both how some acted not in faith and those that acted in faith. So it's really challenging for us to look at our own lives, our own choices. It's like, boy, if we're not careful, we could come out of this being really depressed about ourselves because we get hit with the reality of what faith looks like and what faithlessness looks like. And too often we can identify with the faithless part and not so much with the faith part. So it's challenging us in a way it's really difficult to really stick in there and keep going. It's also challenging physically because while this is going on, we're making these dozens, I think hundreds of prostrations. And it can seem like, how many more can I really do? We get to a point, both spiritually and physically, and even in some ways emotionally, where it's hard to keep going. And that's where it takes faith. But I think it happens to all of us every day. I think we get to moments where will we act out in obedience when it gets really hard, when we're tempted really powerfully to do the right thing or to not do the wrong thing. And to make it through that and trust God enough to follow his way, that's faith, or at least it's much deeper faith than when there's no risk. Sometimes it's a spiritual practice like praying or fasting. Sometimes it's how we see somebody. It's really easy to accuse them, and even just in our hearts. But to be faithful means we trust God that we can be kind to people that aren't being kind to us, or forgive people who haven't forgiven us. Whatever it is, that moment where it really takes some risk and trust in God to keep going, that's our point of faith. So I hope throughout this Lenten season, throughout all our lives, we'll keep pushing to that point of faith and then keep going. So often we get to that point and that's when we start to back up. And then we wonder, why is it so hard to have faith? Well, we didn't give ourselves a chance. We got to that point of faith, or at least a much deeper faith, and then we pulled back. So I hope we'll have the commitment, the strength, and the trust in God to power through and trust in Him through those moments of really extreme difficulty, and then really see what He's going to do when we act out in faith to Him and see how He's going to bless us and reward us for our trust in Him. And that's really where all the good stuff is in the Christian life. So I hope you found this encouraging, and I hope we'll all keep pushing past those points. And if you did find it helpful, please share with your friends via social media, call them up, send them an email, send them a text, send them a telegram. Do we still have telegrams? I don't even know. Anyway, share it, and God willing, we'll see you in next week's video.